Get on all fours and bark. The command, laced with venomous authority, echoed off the bare cinder-block walls of the Westfield High Gymnasium. A stunned silence descended upon the 150 students gathered there, a silence so profound it seemed to swallow the very sound of their collective breath. A single nervous giggle sliced through the tension, but was instantly strangled as Marcus's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes pinpointing the offender with predatory accuracy. Hanwalker's gaze remained locked on the scuffed wooden floor. Her hands, clasped tightly in front of her, trembled visibly. Yet, to a trained eye, the tremors were not random. They followed a precise, almost metronomic rhythm. 789. Are you even listening to me, you freak? Marcus's voice dropped from a triumphant bellow to a low, dangerous growl. I said, get on your fucking knees and bark like the pathetic bitch you are. The circle of students, a living, breathing wall of anticipation and fear, tightened around them. Smartphones were raised like a phalanx of digital shields and weapons, screens glowing, ready to capture the humiliation. Hanwalker stood utterly alone at the center. Her slight, 5'4" frame seemed to shrink even further against Marcus Thompson's imposing 6'4", 220-pound physica, solid mass of muscle, privilege, and pure spite. The harsh fluorescent lights overhead cast deep, dramatic shadows across the sharp angles of his face as he leaned in so close she could smell the faint, sickly sweet residue of a protein shake on his breath. The crowd drank it in. They always did when Marcus found a new target for his particular brand of cruelty. The invisible girl, the one who occupied the back row of every class, who ate her lunch alone in the library, Carol, who navigated the halls with the ethereal presence of a ghost, was perfect prey. She had no friends to defend her, no social capital to lose, but their perception was a carefully constructed facade. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly comprehend, was that Hannah Walker wasn't counting in her head to calm a panic attack. She was executing a cold, calculated countdown to zero. The catalyst had been a moment of weakness 3 weeks prior. Han was running on empty, stretched thin by the brutal duality of her existence. Grueling 5:30 a.m. strength and conditioning sessions before school, and late night, no-holds-barred fights in underground rings for a promoter who knew her only as the Ghost. That day, drained and operating on autopilot, when one of Marcus's lackeys, Sakai, had accidentally knocked her books from her hands in the crowded hallway. Her body had reacted before her mind could engage. It was a minuscule movement, a subtle shift of weight, and a slight deflection of his wrist that completely neutralized his follow-up shove, sending him stumbling past her with a confused grunt. No one else had noticed the expert maneuver. No one except for Marcus Thompson. Marcus Thompson ruled the microcosm of Westfield High with the absolute authority of a feudal lord, star linebacker, nephew of the town mayor, 6 years of elite wrestling training, and the product of a father who preached a single brutal gospel. Strength, physical, social, intimidating, was the only currency that mattered. He had meticulously built his reputation on systematically breaking anyone who displayed a flicker of defiance or independent thought. It was a sport to him, and in that moment, in the hallway, he'd identified his newest project. "I'm gonna count to 3, Marcus announced, his voice booming in the silent gym, playing perfectly to his audience. 1. Han's fingers twitched almost imperceptibly. In another life, her real life, those same deceptively slender fingers had tapped out Antonio the Anvil or Revas on a blood-stained canvas. Those hands, which seemed so small and fragile to her classmates, boasted 47 consecutive wins in places where defeat meant a trip to the emergency room, not a stint in detention. 2. Her mind flashed to her 16-year-old brother, David, waging a far more desperate battle in a sterile hospital bed. Leukemia was an enemy that was utterly indifferent to schoolyard hierarchies and underground championships. It only understood one language: money. $100,000 for an experimental treatment not covered by insurance. A sum that was both a lifeline and an impossibility. 3. The crowd tensed as one. This was the familiar, awful precipice. The moment the victim's spirit would finally snap. The moment they would dissolve into tears, begin to beg, and fulfill whatever degrading demand Marcus desired. It was the natural order of their world. The strong preyed upon the weak. Han dropped to her knees. The gymnasium erupted. Camera flashes lit up the room like a strobe light. Someone yelled, "Balls." Others howled with laughter, doubling over and struggling to keep their phones steady. Marcus stood over her, arms spread wide like a conquering gladiator, basking in the adoration and fear of his subjects. His expression was one of pure, unadulterated triumph. "That's right," he declared, projecting his voice for the benefit of every recording device. "Know your fucking place. Now bark for daddy. Let everyone hear you." Han's lips moved. No sound escaped, but her mouth clearly formed numbers, silent words, against the roar. 456. The laughter intensified. The crowd misinterpreted the movement entirely, believing she was trying to form words of submission, but was choked by fear. They saw what they wanted to see. 789. Marcus's victorious smirk began to falter, replaced by impatience. The script he had written demanded total, audible humiliation. Quiet, stoic acceptance was not enough. It wasn't entertaining. He needed the visceral sound of her barking. He needed to see her psyche shatter into a million pieces. He needed a clean, viral video clip by lunchtime, tagged #Westfield High, #LB Humbles Weirdo. So he escalated, falling back on his default setting for noncompliance. He drew his foot back, aiming a controlled but painful kick at her ribs. Yes, the transformation occurred in the infinitesimal space between one heartbeat and the next. One moment, Hannah Walker was a trembling, defeated girl on her knees. The next, she was something else entirely, a predator, assessing its environment. Her breathing, once shallow and rapid, evened out into a deep, controlled rhythm. The tension drained from her shoulders, replaced by a relaxed readiness. When her eyes finally lifted to meet his, they held no trace of fear, no flash of anger. There was only a chilling, analytical, calmed look of someone who could calculate the exact amount of force required to fracture a rib or dislocate a knee. "Wait," a hushed voice whispered from the periphery of the crowd. "Dude, look at her face." But Marcus was already committed to his action. His foot flew toward her side with enough force to knock the wind out of anyone foolish enough to remain stationary. Han did not remain stationary. She moved with a fluid, economical grace, like water flowing around a stone, finding the single path of least resistance. She didn't jump back. She simply shifted her torso a few precise inches. The kick, meant to connect solidly with her ribs, sliced through empty air. Marcus, his body braced for impact, was thrown violently off balance by his own unchecked momentum. He stumbled forward awkwardly while Han completed a smooth, backward roll, coming up into a low, balanced stance that was more feral than human. It was a fighter's stance. The laughter died an instant, abrupt death. A phone clattered to the floor from a slackened grip. Lucky shot, Marcus snarled. A desperate attempt to reclaim the narrative and control the sudden shift in energy. But a subtle new note had entered his voice, a hairline fracture in his bedrock confidence. He'd been in enough legitimate wrestling matches and back-alley scuffles to recognize the difference between frantic, panicked movement and the deliberate, trained reactions of a seasoned fighter. This was unequivocally the latter. "Get up," he ordered, the command lacking its previous conviction. "Stop playing games." Han rose slowly, every movement intentional and devoid of wasted energy. It was an economy of motion that would be instantly recognizable in any fight, gym, or underground ring. But here, in the bright, mundane reality of a high school gym, it looked alien and deeply unsettling. "I already apologized to your friend," she stated, her voice calm and clear, cutting through the silence. "I've asked you, repeatedly, to leave me alone. I've tried to tell you that you need to learn what real respect is." Marcus took a threatening step forward, attempting to use his sheer physical bulk to intimidate her back into submission. "And now, you get back on your knees, or what? What exactly are you gonna do?" Han merely tilted her head, a faint, curious gesture. "What's your plan, Marcus? Are you going to hit me, right here, in front of all these cameras? Are you going to try and humiliate me further? You're going to make my life—" A deliberate, weighted pause. "But you're already doing that. You have been, for weeks." The crowd inhaled sharply as one. This was uncharted territory. No one talked back to Marcus Thompson. No one stood their ground once he had decided to make an example of them. "Guys," Marcus barked, not daring to take his eyes off Han now. "Looks like the weirdo wants to play a more serious game. Let's teach her the rules." 3 of his football teammates, Zachary Jung, who'd initiated the whole affair with the shove, Derek Chen, his primary enforcer, and Tyler Rodriguez, who derived a disturbing pleasure from inflicting pain, shouldered their way through the packed students. It was 4 against 1, to 220-pound athletes and their cohorts against a girl who might weigh 115 pounds, soaking wet. "Still feel like playing the tough girl," Marcus spat. Han's phone chose that moment to vibrate in her pocket, a specific, coded pattern. She didn't need to look. It was Vincent, her promoter. It was a reminder of fight night, of the tournament, of the $100,000 prize that hovered like a mirage, the only thing that could possibly save her brother. But she couldn't simply walk away, not with these 4 blocking every potential exit, not with 100 phones documenting every second, and not with Marcus's fragile ego and reputation now demanding a total victory. "I don't want to fight," she said, and the statement was utterly sincere. To fight here, truly fight, meant to reveal the weapon she had spent years forging. Revelation meant endless questions, police involvement, and the catastrophic end of the double life that funded her brother's survival. "Too fucking bad," Marcus nodded to his lackeys. "'Cause you about to get a first-hand lesson in what happens to people who think they can disrespect me." They moved into a loose semicircle, a practiced formation. They'd done this many times before, hurting their target, cutting off angles of escape, taking turns, delivering shoves, insults, and the occasional discreet blow, until the victim's will was completely broken. It was a brutal, efficient system that had worked on countless students over the years. But those previous victims had spent the last 5 years of their lives systematically turning their bodies into instruments of controlled violence out of sheer, desperate necessity. Zach moved first, overconfident, going for a simple grab of her arm. His hand never made contact. Han shifted her weight a fraction of an inch, her forearm brushing against his wrist in a specific way, and suddenly Zach's own forward momentum was redirected, sending him stumbling clumsily past her, colliding with a few students in the front row. To the untrained eye, it appeared he had simply tripped over his own feet. But to anyone with knowledge of biomechanics and leverage, it was a textbook demonstration of using an opponent's force against them. "Stop dancing around, you freak," Marcus barked, his frustration mounting. "Derek, Tyler, just grab her and hold her still." They advanced from both sides, attempting to pin her between their larger bodies. Han waited perfectly still until the very last millisecond, then dropped her center of gravity straight down into a deep squat. Derek and Tyler, unable to arrest their own motion, collided with each other at full force. A loud and painful thud of flesh and bone that elicited a collective wince from the watching students. She rolled backwards smoothly and rose effortlessly at the edge of the circle, her expression unchanged. "How the hell is she doing that?" someone whispered, their voice laced with awe and confusion. "Is she like a black belt or something? That ain't karate, man. Look at her." Marcus's face flushed a deep, blotchy red. This scenario was supposed to be simple, clean. Intimidate the weird girl, force a humiliating submission, get the viral video, and reinforce the social hierarchy. Instead, 3 of his most reliable guys were being made to look like clumsy fools by someone everyone had unanimously agreed was powerless. "Enough of this shit," he roared, his patience evaporating. He rushed forward himself, leading with a wild, wide haymaker that had actually knocked out 3 other students in the past year. It was all brute force and anger. For Han, time seemed to decelerate. She saw the punch coming as if it were moving through thick syrup. She saw the obvious telegraph in the drop of his shoulder, the terrible, off-balance stance that left his entire right side exposed. And she saw a dozen different ways to counter a knee to the solar plexus, a shin kick to the supporting leg, an elbow to the temple, each one capable of leaving him unconscious before his body hit the floor. But she also saw the forest of phones, the inevitable tsunami of questions from school officials, police, and the media that would follow if she publicly dismantled the star athlete. The exposure would be instant and total. So, in a split second, she made a conscious, torturous decision. She let the punch connect, but not fully. She turned her shoulder inward at the last possible moment, allowing the force to glance off the muscle, dissipating its energy. The impact still spun her around and sent her back down to one knee, selling the effect. The crowd gasped in unified shock, then immediately erupted in relieved, triumphant cheers. This was the satisfying conclusion they had been waiting for. The natural order, momentarily disrupted, had been forcefully restored. Marcus stood over her once more, breathing heavily from adrenaline and exertion, his face a mask of victorious exertion. "See," he proclaimed, addressing his audience once again. "Just a fluke. Just dumb luck. But luck always runs out." Han touched her shoulder, a quick, professional assessment. He had pulled the punch at the very end. Even in his rage, some subconscious instinct for self-preservation and avoidance of legal trouble had kicked in. She understood then that even Marcus had boundaries. He wanted submission and spectacle, not a felony assault charge. Last chance, he said, leaning down, his voice low and venomous, meant for her ears only. Get on your hands and knees and bark, make it loud, or I swear to God, the next one won't be pulled. I'll put you in the hospital. Her phone vibrated again in her pocket. Vincent, impatient. Every second she wasted in this circus was a second less to mentally and physically prepare for the fight that night. The fight that represented the only conceivable path to saving David. But as she looked up at Marcus, at the cruel, glinting satisfaction in his eyes, at the crowd of her peers hungry for her complete degradation, a profound and sudden exhaustion washed over her. She was tired, tired of the hiding, tired of the constant pretense of weakness, tired of allowing petty tyrants like Marcus Thompson to believe they were the apex predators of the world. No, she said.
The single, simple word hit the charged atmosphere of the gym like a clap of thunder. A collective, sharp intake of breath followed. No one said no to Marcus Thompson. No one refused a direct order once he had them cornered, isolated, and broken. "What did you just say to me?" he asked, the words dripping with icy menace. I said, "No." Han rose again, this time slower, deliberately exaggerating a wince of pain in her shoulder for effect. "I'm done playing your pathetic games. I'm done being your afternoon entertainment. I'm done pretending that what you have is strength. You think you have a choice." Marcus laughed, but the sound was hollow and strained, a thin veneer over rising confusion and fury. "You think you can just say no and walk the hell out of here?" "Yes," Han said, her voice gaining a new, steely quality. She stood to her full height, and though he still loomed over her, something in her posture, the set of her jaw, the calm certainty in her eyes made the nearest students instinctively take a half step back. "This is what is going to happen. I am going to turn around, and I am going to walk out of this gym. You are going to stand there and let me pass. And tomorrow, every single person here is going to pretend this never happened." A heavy, deliberate pause hung in the air. "Or," she continued, her voice dropping to a near whisper that was somehow more terrifying than a shout, "I will stop holding back." The challenge hung between them, palpable and electric. Marcus stared, his brain struggling to process this outright defiance. For the first time, he was truly seeing her. The way she stood perfectly balanced on the balls of her feet, the relaxed but ready position of her hands, the utter lack of fear in her eyes that had clearly witnessed a caliber of violence far beyond anything a schoolyard bully could conceive. "You're bluffing, Hannah," he stated, trying to convince himself as much as her. She offered a small, cold smile. It wasn't a smile of joy or fear, but the same dispassionate expression 47 other fighters had seen in the seconds before their world went black. "There's only one way for you to know for sure." Marcus could feel the energy of the crowd beginning to turn. They had come for a straightforward show of dominance, and were instead getting a tense, psychological thriller. The invisible girl wasn't breaking. She wasn't begging. She was standing her ground, as if she genuinely believed she held the power here. His reputation, the very foundation of his identity, wouldn't survive this intact, even if he ultimately won, which he still, in some deep part of his psyche, believed he would. The mere fact that she was challenging him was already eroding the climate of fear he had cultivated for years. "Fine," he spat, cracking his knuckles with a theatrical show of force. "You wanna play? Fight, girl. Let's play. But when this is over, you won't just be barking. You'll be begging on your hands and knees for me to stop." He charged her then, not with a wild punch, but with the technique that had won him 3 district wrestling championships. A low, powerful shoot, arms wide, to prevent any evasion, the move that had ended every real physical altercation he'd ever been in. Hannah saw him coming with the cold, analytical detachment of someone who had faced men twice his size, and 3 times as skilled in places where the only rule was to walk out conscious. She had microseconds to decide. Option 1. Let him take her down. Hope that the teachers or security arrived before he could do serious damage in front of the cameras, and accept a brutal, public beating. Option 2. Reveal the full extent of her capabilities. End the fight instantly and decisively, and in doing so, expose the ghost to the world, inviting a cascade of consequences that would likely destroy her chance at saving her brother. Her brother's face flashed in her mind, pale, thin from the chemo, but still able to muster a weak smile for his big sister, still believing she would find a way. Vincent's fights paid the bills. $5,000 for a standard win. $20,000 for a title defense. The $100,000 grand prize for the tournament tonight was the only light in a very dark tunnel. If she revealed herself here, it would all vanish. The promoters, the gambling rings, the secrecy, it would all be over. But if she allowed Marcus Thompson to body slam her onto the hard gym floor and humiliate her further, something else would vanish forever. The last vestige of her, the final piece of her that remembered how to stand tall and fight back. The decision, once agonizing, now felt inevitable. Marcus was less than a foot away, his hands reaching for her legs. When Han moved, to the mesmerized audience, it appeared like a magic trick. One moment she was a stationary target. In the next blurred instant, she was a whirlwind of motion, spinning laterally beside him like a matador evading a bull. Her left hand shot out, not to strike, but to touch his right shoulder, applying precise pressure at the exact moment of his lunge. It was a subtle redirection, amplifying his own forward momentum. It was enough. He flew past the space where she had been, his balance completely gone, and crashed directly into the front row of students. They scattered like bowling pins. Marcus hit the hardwood floor with a heavy grating thud, his body rolling twice before coming to a jarring stop against the bleachers. When he pushed himself up onto his elbows and looked back, his expression was a chaotic mix of utter rage, physical pain, and dawning, terrifying astonishment. Wrestling is a good foundation, Han stated, her tone almost academic, as if she were critiquing his form. It's excellent for controlling opponents of a similar size and skill level, but it has significant strategic gaps when you're facing someone trained in multiple, more fluid disciplines. You overcommit, you leave yourself open. She saw the exact moment the realization truly dawned in his eyes. It wasn't just that she was lucky or quirky. The puzzle pieces snapped together, the deflection in the hallway, the evasions, the precise redirection, the calm analysis. She wasn't a weird girl who knew a few tricks. She was something else entirely. Something dangerous and unknown. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, getting to his feet with a new, pronounced wariness. Then, a voice, high with excitement, cut through the silence. "Hey, it's Ghost. Look." A sophomore near the front was frantically swiping through his phone before holding it up, a grainy YouTube video playing on the screen. It showed a figure in a dark hood and featureless mask, moving with a brutal, efficient grace in a dilapidated warehouse. Same height, same build. Look at the footwork. It's exactly the same. It's Ghost, from the fight videos. The name rippled through the crowd, a current of electric excitement and shock. Ghost. Everyone had heard the rumors. An undefeated phantom on the illegal underground circuit. 47 wins, most by brutal knockout. A legend. More phones came out. A digital frenzy erupted as students pulled up videos, comparing shaky low-light footage of the Ghost dismantling grown men to the girl standing calmly in their gym. The evidence was irrefutable. The same unique footwork patterns, the same economical, devastating movements, the same eerie calm in the face of violence. Marcus's face lost all its color. You're Ghost." Han offered no denial. It was pointless. The truth was displayed on 50 different screens. The gym, once a stage for Marcus's bullying, had become a surreal press conference. The quietest girl in school was the most feared underground fighter in the state. Han's phone vibrated again, insistently. This time it was a call. Vincent. She declined it without a glance, but the customized ringtone, the theme from Rocky, a joke from someone in the fight circuit, blared unmistakably in the silence. "So," Han said, a newfound boldness settling over her. "What's the next move in your script? Marcus, you wanted a dog. You got a wolf. You wanted to humiliate me and put it online. You wanted to erase me." She took a single step forward, and the crowd, sensing a fundamental shift in power, instinctively parted slightly. "The offer still stands. I walk out. This ends, or we finish this, and you become just another tally on my record. Your choice." The ultimatum hung in the air between them, stark and terrifying. Marcus was trapped. His pride, the very engine of his existence, screamed at him to attack, to reassert his dominance. But a primal survival instinct, newly awakened, held him frozen. He had seen the videos. He knew what the Ghost was capable of. "I don't give a damn what you do in some shitty fight club," he finally growled, the bravado in his voice painfully forced. "This is my school. My rules, and you're still just a weird girl Who's had enough? Another voice, trembling but determined, rang out. Ashley Martinez, the tiny freshman, pushed her way to the front, tears streaming down her face, but her chin held high. Just stop it, Marcus, please. Can't you see what you're doing? What you've always done. This time, the dam didn't just break. It shattered. Other voices joined hers, a torrent of long-suppressed anger and pain. You made my brother drop off the team. You put Jake Morrison in the hospital last year. You trashed the science fair project because Sarah wouldn't go out with you. You've been terrorizing this school since you got here. Marcus's head swiveled wildly, trying to identify and intimidate the speakers, but the faces were a blur of unified anger. The spell of fear that had held them captive for years was broken, and in its place was a roaring cascade of truth. Shut up, he screamed, his voice cracking with desperation and fury. All of you, just shut the hell up. I run this place. You run nothing. Han's voice, quiet yet razor-sharp, cut through his tantrum. She took another step forward, and though he still physically towered over her, she seemed to fill the space. You're a scared, pathetic little boy who hurts people because someone hurt you first. Because your shitty father drilled into your head that being strong means making others weak. Because you're terrified that if you ever stop pushing everyone else down, you'll have to face the fact that there's nothing underneath all that muscle and rage but a hollow, worthless shell. Every word landed with the force of a physical blow. Marcus's face cycled through emotions. Rage, humiliation, and finally, a raw, exposed flicker of pain that he couldn't quite hide. You don't know anything about me, he whispered, the defense sounding weak and childish. I know everything I need to know, Han replied, her voice losing its heat, becoming almost matter-of-fact. I've fought 50 versions of you. The faces and names are different, but the brokenness inside is always the same. The same pathetic need to break anything beautiful, because you know, deep down, that something beautiful in you was broken a long time ago. The gym was utterly silent. Even those still holding their phones had lowered them, captivated by a drama far deeper than any viral humiliation video. But here's the difference between you and me, Marcus, Han continued, her gaze never leaving his. I learned to fight to protect people, to save my family. You learned to fight to hurt people, to make yourself feel big. And that's why you will always lose to someone like me. Not because I'm stronger or faster, but because I'm not afraid of you. And look around. They're not afraid of you anymore either. She gestured to the encircling crowd. Marcus looked. He truly looked, and he saw it. The fear was gone, completely, replaced by a hard, collective resolve. A shared, liberating realization that the Emperor had no clothes, that the monster was just a man. His phone rang. The shrill sound, a bizarre intrusion into the moment. He fumbled for it desperately, a drowning man grasping for any distraction. What? He barked into the receiver. Then his face went ashen. What do you mean, expelled? You can't, Dad. Dad, talk to